Episode 7 of Contra Republic, formerly God Save the King. We pretend that podcast didn't exist. I'm joined by Dr. Marcel Dumas, a PhD in economics and fellow at the Mises Institute.
Good to be here.
So I wanted to bring you on. There seems to be a big push in the online right to mainly push the idea of psychedelics as a treatment for basically a cure-all for all mental afflictions.
Yes, this is gangly conservatism. I've written a long article series about this. Yeah, they say that it brings you closer to Jesus. It protects you from. It somehow protects you from malignant psychic influences. It makes you smarter, like a better worker, but also it makes you realize that you don't need to work. It's all things to all people, seemingly based on just modulating your dose and having the right person supervise your trip. So you have it being pushed by the American conservative. You have it being pushed by Elon Musk and Joe Rogan. You have it being pushed by even like mainstream Republicans like Dan Crenshaw and Rick Perry. Yes, it's you see it in one place and you think like, oh, that's interesting. But then once you see how many places you see it, you're like, what? And at best, it's, so to speak, it's paid. It's messages from our sponsors. So when it comes to Rick Perry, Dan Crenshaw, and they're working with the likes of AOC and Cory Booker. So it's bipartisan on that end. There we can identify one or two, actually 3 or 4 think tanks and hedge funds that are backing them. So there we can almost just pawn that one off as well. America has a private healthcare system. There are lots of companies that make money selling pharmaceuticals. It stands to reason that they're going to spend that money on politicians pushing their stuff and legalizing it. I could almost just wave that away, But, when it comes to every tastemaker on the right also doing it, it's a little bit more insidious than just we're legalizing product.
Yeah, I've read all. I actually binge read all the articles. They were very well done.
Oh, glad you like
yeah,
them.
I mean that's why I wanted to bring you on, because I as someone who has mental disorders, which people can yell at me that I shouldn't say that, and has done psych-a-lot, they really do they can actually make a really bad episodes and make everything 10 times worse for a bit, and just cause you to have a downward spiral of psychosis for a while.
Just to front load, when people talk about how these drugs they open you up to new ways of thinking or a mind expanding. What these drugs are is amnesiacs. I was discussing this in a different context, but I realized that all microdosing is, and we've all experienced this phenomenon just in our day-to-day lives. If you've ever written something, spent a long time writing an article, or when you're looking at it, you don't see all the typos, and then you go to sleep, and then you wake up. And you no longer have the short-term memory of writing it down. Your eyes in that moment are fresh. And then suddenly you look at it and you're like, oh, I see every single typo I made. What if you could just take an amnesiac so that you effectively forget what you just did seconds ago, or you can have a sort of a running amnesia. And then in that case, your eyes are always fresh as far as typos go. Microdosing is just basically attempting to ride that line. So you're not really thinking in a new way. Your mind is not open to new ways of thinking any more than when I write a paper, go to sleep, and wake up. I'm a new person seeing my paper and like, wow, I've suddenly realized like new things about my paper. Like I went to bed and I woke up, right? That's not a revolutionary new thought pattern. That's just me not being in a rut. And so that's me making the Steelman case but notice you're taking an amnesiac. You are taking a drug whose, in that case, whose principal effect is making you forget what you just did seconds ago. And then and anybody could just see like, well, what's the problem with writing that effect? Well, there's a pleasant experience of going to bed, waking up, and seeing what you wrote. But we've all experienced also getting up and walking into a room and forgetting what we were supposed to be doing. This is also an amnesiac effect. So you're trying to, and then at higher doses, of course, hallucinations, mental disassociations, and so on and so forth. But when people talk about psychedelics and they say like, "Oh yeah, my mind was really like open," like, go to bed, and then you can get the same effects.
Yeah, I mean, and also as you point out in your articles, a lot of this has to do with like Theo because he's invested heavily in this, and that's why he's pushing it. It also, as you said, makes you non-political. You notice how they're not pushing like uppers, like it'd be like it's like there's this one guy who just hit someone with his car. This I don't know if you know. Or basically, it was this crazy looks maxer who's promoting meth use.
Oh, I do know. I remember what the person's name was, but well, I do remember someone at like Sovereign House. They were doing like neo-reactionary cigarettes. I don't remember what the name of it was, but I do remember a lot of the Theo people were pushing a cigarette. So they do push nicotine. They do. I remember at one point they were telling people, they were joking, but they were telling people that if you abuse aspirin enough, you'll get like A10 blue eyes. So they do occasionally push uppers.
If you abuse aspirin enough, I think you're just going to get liver failure.
You'll just die, yeah.
Yeah,
and the thing is, they're always pretending, like they're always riding the line of like, are they serious or not? Because they say, okay, well, obviously we're joking about the aspirin. Meanwhile, they'll have you be taking this thing like mescaline blue, which is just it is a clothing dye that I think it has I think it's a treatment for like cyanide poisoning.
It's also toxic at high doses. Like
yeah, it's useful. Mescaline blue. It's on label use. It's the same as though if you were to ever accidentally drink antifreeze and you need to drink like actual the cure is methanol, right? That doesn't mean that methanol is good for you because it one toxin counteracts another. So cyanide has a very toxic effect because the way it works is it inhabits the same space inside your cells that oxygen molecules do. So all of your cells are suffocating no matter how much you breathe. And mescaline blue will sort of knock the cyanide out of place. And so when you take it, there's sort of this immediate, sort of an immediate euphoric effect because you've effectively, how can I put this? You effectively like smothered all your cells at once and then like open them up again. You've power cycled yourself because it is replacing oxygen for like just a fraction of a second. That rush of suddenly all your cells acting as if you've suddenly taken a breath for the first time. And they say, wow, I'm like thinking better. Like, you are not thinking better. You are, in that moment, you are euphoric. That's what's happening to you.
Yeah. I've noticed that these people like, I mean, look, I'll be the first thing. I went on a week-long bender that put me in the emergency room involving alcohol, caffeine, and edibles. And after that, let's just say I went to the funny people woo for a few weeks, and it wasn't pleasant. So that's what's gonna happen when you like start taking these psychedelics and doing what these people say. Yeah. You're just gonna end up in a mental institution.
Yeah.
And I've noticed like a lot of the things they push actually are toxic to the human body. Like these things actually have a negative physiological effect on you. Like heavy doses of, if you're doing mushrooms, that can dehydrate you. You can die of dehydration. You can wander into traffic. Like basically these things could very easily get you killed, especially if you could also get sexually assaulted at a Sovereign House meeting.
Oh, yes, of course. Let's see what other things they've been pushing. I had a list of, there was hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. That was relatively okay. There's fenbendazole, which is an antiparasitic, which they say cures cancer. There's something called DMSO, or dimethyl sulfoxide, which what it is it is the thing that it's a drug whose primary effect is making other drugs like topically applied. So
I know what that is. I used to hang out with a bunch of left-wing anarchists, and they used to smear that on themselves, then smear THC on it.
Yeah. And so they say, you can use it to treat pain, which is true. And then they also say incorrectly that it can treat cancer. There's something called laetrile, which is something found in almonds and apricots. and it's also supposedly a cancer treatment. A lot of these things are like fake cancer treatments. There's things like castor oil, which is supposed to be this cure-all. There's the repeat diet, which they're always pushing. There's med beds, methylene blue, we already talked about. Colloidal silver, where I think
that one actually will turn your skin blue and is extreme. It's a heavy metal.
Permanently, yes. There's also super male vitality sold by Alex Jones. So these people are constantly pushing a variety of health scams, which at best do nothing, and at worst will literally turn you blue.
Or kill you. They can also
I'm sorry, or kill you. Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, like, at least Alex Jones, no one's believing super male vitality plus, and it makes a great gag gift.
Mm-hmm.
Like, at least you get them as a joke, but it is clearly, I mean, Dr. Dumas, you notice there's like kind of like a correlation between them and like the radical left who also push these weird psychedelics like HRT and these same things.
I mean, is HRT a psychedelic?
I mean, I
feel like there's a little bit less health kookery on the left. I haven't, this isn't in the current article series, but I'm trying to turn this into a book. And I do talk about the movement of anti-vaccine sentiment from the left to the right. And it was because of COVID. And at the time, being anti-vaccine was seen as, it's like being vegetarian, or some other kind of like.
Well, Dr. Dumas, I have some experience with this because I grew up in my mother was a left-wing anarchist, and the anti-vax movement and weird health fads are just as big on the left as they are in the right. Like it's not just you see the same thing. It's different. It's more like crystals. You gotta do some DMT to get closer to goddess. But yeah, anti-vax is just as big on the left. But I think the real issue with the anti-vax movement is those legitimate criticisms to be leveled against the vaccine makers, because they have carve-outs in the law where it's not an actual open market, that you can't sue them if you're injured. They do not have to have the same market pressures put on them than other pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, so America does have a few regulations on vaccines, but so one that we have is the Vaccine Injury Fund, where vaccine manufacturers basically need to put aside money to treat people who are harmed by like bad batches. But that money and the vaccine injury reports, that was put together on the assumption that it's not that vaccines are systematically bad, but just in case some company someone didn't wash their hands or whatever, or they didn't put enough mercury or whatever in the vaccine, and it's actually active or cause then the company needs to pay out. And I think that law was put into place in like the early 90s. I don't remember exactly. And that did the occasional payout, but not very often. Yeah. And nobody in Congress was really opposed to the premise that a vaccine company might take a shortcut and somebody could get hurt. What the real resistance was, and when that law came out, that actually politically it sort of satisfied the Jenny McCarthy's and the Robert F. Kennedys of the world. But then came the idea that it's not that vaccine manufacturers are occasionally making mistakes or just being unsafe, but that the entire way in which we do vaccines, because of heavy metal content, is dangerous. And that is something the government is just does not want to hear anything about. Let's see, there's something else about the thing, at least from my understanding, the thing about vaccines that is politically motivated, besides this obviously this reluctance to acknowledge the possibility that heavy metals could cause harm, is the idea that our current vaccine schedule, and you've probably, if you've certain, as you say, you've seen this in your spheres, the idea of alternative vaccine schedules, where instead of getting it as the doctor recommends it, you space them out in your own fashion so your kid isn't getting 14 vaccines in one visit. And doctors are instructed not to, under any circumstances, to pretend that those are valid. Those things are totally, we'll call them benign. They don't cause any harm, because they usually end up, most alternative vaccine schedules actually tend to end up with your kids taking the exact same amount of vaccines, just spaced differently. But the reason why these are opposed by not so much doctors, but the healthcare infrastructure, is because a lot of parents don't take their kids to regular pediatric visits, but once a year or during like a medical emergency. And so because of, we'll call them low agency parents, the healthcare system is like, as soon as you get this kid in hand, we need effectively legal cause to borderline compel a parent to vaccinate these kids. So it's basically as soon as your kid is born.
Yeah, we have all these outbreaks of these diseases, and it's not, people like to blame the anti-vaxxers, but it's really third world immigrants who aren't vaccinated to begin with who are fucking it up. But but the thing I've noticed is that these people, like, they kind of make like every single.
So I gotta press against that. So if you immigrate into the country, if you come in legally, you are required to be fully up to date on your immunization. So it would need to be illegal aliens. Now, I think there have been I think I did hear of like a bed bugs outbreak.
Bed bugs, black plague.
Yes, literal black plague. Things like that. But more often, the serial vaccine hesitants are more a more homegrown population of city dweller, not so much immigrants when it comes to systematically like delaying taking vaccines or thinking they're not important.
Well, to be honest, I've only ever had one. My parents never did it, and now I'm an adult. I'm just like,
only had one vaccine
ever.
What was it?
COVID. I had to get it for work. I really didn't want to take it, but I had to
talk about face planting at the finish line.
I know. Like
that's like how I've only ever voted for one person, which is Donald Trump 2016. I've never voted for anyone else, so that's always just going to be on my record.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know how I've gotten tetanus. I work in construction. I've cut myself. Now I'm a tetanus denier because I've cut myself so many times on rusty things that I've never gotten it. So at this point, I'm a tetanus denier.
I don't remember what actually causes tetanus. Is it
I think
a bacteria that grows on rust?
I think so, but like I've never gotten it, and I've cut the shit out of myself with rusty stuff. I'm pretty sure it is. But yeah, these people are really pushing this, as you said, because Thiel is heavily invested in these basically the companies that own this as a treatment for psychological disorders.
Yes, he's got a few. Let me tell you exactly what they are. So there's Red Cell, which is also owned by Grant Verstandig. There is Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions, which is really a subsidiary of TerraMind, and TerraMind, a subset of Red Cell. Oh, Thiel has Compass Pathways. So actually, I want to be clear. Red Cell is not owned by Thiel. Compass Pathways is. And that is his primary in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Anytime you bring up the Thiel network to these people, they all shut down. Like, what network? I don't know what you're talking about.
They pretend not to know it exists, yeah.
I've come to the conclusion, like, every time you start pointing out that a lot of people start having these weird similarities in their beliefs, like, it's like people who start weirdly praising the Qatari government for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah, actually, Leather Apron Club has a good video about the Qatar money idea, because there's been a sort of a let's say a psychosis on both sides. Because when I first heard about Qatari money, I thought people were joking, because this is obviously we want to talk about Israel and you're not. But then I realized, like, people are like, serious. There's this. They think that Qatar is like funding America, but what Qatar is doing, and Leather Apron Club talks about this, is they're just paying universities. So they're essentially doing like franchise agreements with American universities. So Qatar is building universities in Qatar, and then they are like paying like Texas A&M to just basically put their name on it, and it's like a satellite campus for them. But the money like never actually leaves Qatar.
I'd say there is objectively, like, if you look at stuff like Nebula and you look at like this so-called progressive streaming site, and you're like, wait, why do you guys have so many videos like clearly ball washing an authoritarian regime like Qatar? And you're like, that's weird. That's weird. And then you look at like Tucker Carlson. I'm not gonna say he's taking Qatar, but I just find it strange that Tucker randomly he's like, oh, Qatar is such a nice country. It's like, It really isn't.
Well, yeah, they went on. So it's in the Leather Apron Club video. I strongly recommend you and your audience check it out. But yeah, that interview was a paid thing because Qatar was itself the subject of an Israeli Jewish like media attack. They were being accused of being state sponsors of terror because they've been pressured by the United States into hosting Hamas before, and then because what Qatar does is they're like what they want to be. What they want to be is like the Switzerland of the Middle East, where they're a neutral party to all conflicts. So any kind of talks between like Saudi Arabia and Iran, or Syria and UAE or whatever, are all hosted in Qatar. So they hosted Hamas so that it would be a location where Hamas could have negotiations with Israel. And then we saw recently that Israel literally bombed Qatar in the middle of the day, of a workday. So because they were facing this attack, and I think Donald Trump was trying to like manufacture sanctions. So in that case, the Qataris paid a lobbying firm, and then that lobbying firm connected them to Tucker. But this is all in the video. So just Leather Apron Club, Qatar. He does absolutely great stuff.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to say like, oh, there's a bunch of people on the right being funded by Qatari. I mean, I really should do a video on Nebula and the weird Qatari shilling, but it's just this go that like there is people on the right being paid by foreign actors, special interest groups, and they're like, oh, we're independent media, we're dissidents. I was like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, if you're not willing to take foreign money, I'm not even sure you're a real dissident. Imagine if Lenin said, "I don't want that German train ticket," then where would he be? Imagine if George Washington said, "I don't want those French guns." Sometimes you need, foreign money can be very lucrative sometimes.
Yeah, but you'd have to actually have a viable movement first before it's actually lucrative. Like most of these people don't have anything viable. They're just like as we're doing, just talking basically shit online, pretty much. Yeah. Another topic. So, Dr. Dumas, you're an economics professor, correct?
I'm an economist, but where I work is not for share. Yeah, I have my degree from George Mason. I am an economist. We'll just say.
So I wanted to talk to you about, like a lot of people talk about the H-1B visas and a lot of the how the Indian migrants exploit the system. And I did want to pick your brain about the housing crisis and basically the affordability crisis and how this is tied to state intervention.
Sure. So at the most basic, the U.S. government subsidizes home buying. We see that Trump is trying to make it easier and easier for people to go into debt because actually, I think Donald Trump, God bless his heart, he actually said explicitly, like, I can't take any measures for housing availability that involve lower housing prices because my voter base will revolt against me because they're old boomers who, housing prices must go up because that's their primary asset. So the main way to do this is through tax breaks for borrowers, guaranteed loans, and of course, depressed interest rates, courtesy of the Federal Reserve. So all of these things make it easier for people to go into more and more and more debt, which raises the sticker price of houses, right? So a 50-year mortgage, that means you can go into more debt, which means you can pay more for the house while your payments stay the same. But this is going to, you would think, if it was a 30-year mortgage and now it's a 50, just some back of the hand math there, we're looking at a 60% increase in housing prices. That's not actually how that works. But, that is a theoretical possibility there because everybody would just take out loans that much greater so that their payments stay the same.
Yeah, and I work in the building field, and I've told people, like, how much would it cost me to build a house? I was like, well, if I could just get through all the red tape and not have to deal with it, I could build you a house for $100,000.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this also, that there's a sense in which I was thinking about this like literally this week, that, so to speak, bourgeois people, like just your average homeowner, behaves more like a classical landlord than even actual landlords do, because the old complaint about landlords was that they would obstruct, they would rent seek, and by rent seeking they would obstruct, new construction, new industrialization, new firm development, because they didn't want anybody competing with them for serfs, and they would just, anything productive on their land, they would just predate on it. And in a way, you have the same deal now with NIMBYism, where you have people that somebody's like, I'd like to build some kind of improvement to this land. And then the Grand Council of Neighbors gets together and they say, how much wealth can we possibly extract from you before we let you do this? So, that's another problem. And part of it is like, it's just rent seeking or indirect rent seeking, because in this case, this Grand Council of the Neighbors, they're not doing it. They're not in it for the money. They might be in it to use the taxes to pay for public service, but often they're doing it to raise the values of their own holdings, so they stop new houses so their houses get more expensive, or B, they are legitimately worried about the change in composition of the neighborhood. But new Amazon fulfillment center means more Amazon employees. But then this also means, because of their fear of new neighbors, they're effectively strangling their own children, because children are not born with college degrees. So, when their kids turn 18, 19, 20, 20, they're fresh out of undergrad and they say, oh, I'd like to buy some kind of dwelling in the town in which I grew up. And it's like, well, that's not possible. Those homes are only affordable by people like your parents, who either A, came in at the beginning when the town was first created and they bought low, or people who have the incomes of 20 or 30 years of work experience and can then afford a home. So their own children can't afford to live in those areas now.
And I've noticed another thing is, like, a lot of the small businesses, they are basically, because of the federal backed loans that for some reason a lot of these foreigners qualify for. Like, I used to think it's like, okay, it's weird how all the gas stations are owned by Indians, and you look into that, like, how do these people qualify for this federally backed loan that everyone else doesn't? So that's also another thing, in my opinion, driving up the price of real estate, is a lot of foreign investment and basically the government giving away tax dollars to foreigners to buy houses and other businesses.
That can go either way. Well, foreigners buying it, that's what it is. But very often, foreign investment is how countries with trade surpluses against the United States just offload the money. So if Americans are buying more from Japan than Japanese are buying from America, and Japanese just have this surplus of dollars and nothing to do with it because Americans don't make enough, they don't make anything Japanese people want. What those firms, or rather what the banks that have those dollars will do, is that they will just invest in like buying up land and then building apartment buildings there as an investment asset. So in those cases, that kind of foreign investment would actually increase the housing supply.
I was talking more about the federally backed loans that were.
Yes, in that case, the government is giving foreigners money to compete with Americans for entrepreneurial space and so on.
Yeah, and this is what people don't realize. Like, when these boomers say, like, well, it's the free market. It's like, America doesn't run as a free market. There was so many different layers created to obstruct younger entrepreneurs. If you want to start a business, if you want to even like build a house, there's just so much red tape, and it's really just the boomers are like, how much value can we extract before we hit the grave?
Yeah, and sometimes I just think about it, like, is it rational sometimes, like, because I sometimes, like, I try to see from their point of view, but the level of ideological self-justification is like so pathological. Like, dude, there's just no way. When you hear about these families that like charge their children rent, it's like, no. You can't tell me that you absolutely must lend money to your child at prime interest. It's like, well, there you go. I'm lending my child money at the same interest rate that the Fed gives overnight to banks. That's literally the most generous kind of loan that exists in the economy. It's like, hey, why are you being usurious to your child?
Well, I mean, I really think, like, if you actually, my father's a boomer and he did this, But one of the things I've noticed, like with him and like one of my friends who is older, but she's slightly younger, between Gen X and Gen Z, so boomers and Gen X, is Gen X actually will help their kids out a lot more. And but he, like, if I ask him for something, he'll usually give it to me because I'm good at guilt tripping people.
Hmm.
That like, I need things.
My parents are boomers. I also love them very much, and they do great things for me as well. I should defend them as a general class.
But the issue a lot of boomers come in my I've noticed this. They grew up when like self-centered psychology was like at its height in the 60s and 70s. Like you need to do more for yourself. And I feel like that really plays into their psyche, like the civil rights movement, the white savior complex, and the basically the moving towards when. So I'm rambling, but the moving when businesses will basically abandon ethics. So abandoning business ethics, self-centered psychology, and like white savior complex mixed together, into my opinion, this just they are God's gift to the world.
Yeah, although there's a great book you should read called The Age of Entitlement. Have you read this already?
I've read half of it.
Yeah, it's remember that boomers technically didn't vote for that, right? Like, by definition, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 must have been passed by people who were, probably in their 30s. So those people were born probably in 1930, and then actually earlier than that, because the silent generation was just that. So really, it's the same generation that fought in World War II. So that means they were born 1939 minus 18. So, sometime between 1900 and 1921. And that's the generation that then passed Civil Rights 64.
Yeah, I mean, people
boomers just got to grow up in that world.
Grow up in the world and benefit from that the basically massive surplus, and did nothing to, I would say, stop the ball rolling. They had every opportunity to, in my opinion, stop like the basically complete implosion of American society, which is where they really should get the blame.
Yeah, they would need to have. I mean, for them, the what could we call the boomer uprising was like Ronald Reagan, right? That was. Let me think about that. Yeah, Richard Nixon was a little older. Yeah, so Reaganomics was effectively okay. Reaganomics basically bought out the boomer backlash. So in the 1980s, so boomers are born in 1940, 45 and 65.
48.
So by the 1980s, they're between 20 and 40. So now all the boomers are fully adults. The cracks are starting to show because they live in cities. Those cities are becoming increasingly less safe. We won't see a systematic crime bill until not Reagan, but Clinton. And so Reagan said, okay, listen, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lower your taxes and I'm going to put you all out into the suburbs. And everyone's like, how is that mathematically possible? And he's like, it's called debt. And it's amazing. And the boomers like, okay, and you're sure we're able to escape? And it's like, yes. It's like, who's going to pay for this? And Reagan was like, oh, no one probably.
Yeah, but
which is fascinating because of how liberal, and we think of the boomers as, in some sense, like this liberal hippie generation, but it's not that they're necessarily hippies. They're like
are
naturalists. They are naturalists in both senses of the word, in the sense that they are materialist. That is, they value having physical goods, but then they're naturalists in that they have a certain distrust of like technocracy, and instead they have this almost magical thinking mindset that when things are like more natural, they are better. So, boomers revolted against XYZ in a can, or XYZ in a jar, or, rayon and Teflon and nylon and all these other like polymers. Even as they resisted environmental protection laws, they nonetheless felt like they wanted to live in a world. I really hesitate to use the word natural law, but there's a very interesting like cluster of pathologies going on there. And so you ended up with them electing like a California, a Hollywood screen actor who's on the one hand like literally the fakest thing you can be. Well, I guess what's faker, a screen actor or a lawyer, right? But Ronald Reagan was supposedly a straight talker. That's what they liked about him, and Reagan seemed to acknowledge that there was some what would he say? Oh, the most dangerous words in the English language are "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." So again, the sort of anti-technocratic impulse that boomers had, and what Reagan just gave them was like, I'm just going to just print out money, or not print it. He didn't print it. I'm going to borrow a bunch of money and then just give it to you so you can move out into the suburbs and live your life.
Yeah, I mean, boomers really did benefit from the massive windfall of Reaganism in the 90s. Like, and they seem to have developed like this level of entitlement where if you say, well, okay, we really do need to do something. We can't have like young people in this country not being able to afford homes. Healthcare is through the roof. We can't afford Social Security. They basically become, just to use a euphemism, like the urban youth.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, boomers feel like they could have it all, and with the power of debt, they did. So it's not just that they consumed the surplus. Actually, they bought against. Like there was no surplus, right? What the boomers were doing was just borrowing tons and tons and tons of money. They weren't actually. There wasn't actually this explosion in wealth that they ate. They were at, so to speak, a normal level of wealth, but they consumed above their means. I think that's a better way to actually describe it.
Yeah, I mean, and then we've kind of just kept running the economy like that ever since. I mean, you just look at the way these where the AI companies run. They just like, well, we have $1 million in sorry, $1 trillion in debt. All of the stock market trading at 22 or 30, sometimes 32 times their actual revenue and value.
Yeah, I saw videos like Nvidia, OpenAI, and I don't remember who else, just passing around the same money in a circle, financing each other's data center construction.
Yeah, I mean, also with tax breaks, like we don't, America, I mean, as much as people make fun of China's voodoo economics, we do the same thing.
Yeah,
And
America, because most of these chips are made in American ally states like Taiwan and South Korea, Donald Trump has really been trying to compel companies like Intel to make chips in the United States. But it really takes that kind of thing is not spun up in 1, 2, 4, or even like 8 years. To get it competitive at the scale that is the nanoscale of construction that things are being done. I shouldn't use the word nat. No, I can use the word because it is measured in nanometers. That's going to take a very long time, and Donald Trump has been imposing various tariffs to try to compel people to buy American. But but then he'll brag about how much people are paying in the tariffs. But like if they're paying the tariff, that means that they'd still rather buy foreign than American.
yeah, I mean, people don't realize that the only company that actually is worth the money it's on paper is really the company that makes the chips, which is Taiwanese Semiconductor Manufacturing. Because the guy 20 years ago founded the company. He's like, I'm going to make a giant factory that produces that is just this huge city that produces chips. He's like, that's stupid. He's like, says you.
Yeah. Oh, and the other thing Trump is doing also is, so besides, he's really shafting TSMC on both ends to no effect, because on the one hand, he's telling them that he is arming, he's constructing policy so that American companies can compete with TSMC, while also telling all of TSMC's existing customers that they are not allowed to sell things to China. But if you wanted to protect American manufacturing, by that logic, you would just open up chip demand or you would open up chip manufacturers to the full level of Chinese demand. That, as much as any tariff, would make TSMC chips more expensive for Americans to buy and incite Americans to create new ones. So instead of doing that, he's like, TSMC, we're going to be competing with you, and in the meantime, some of your customers are banned. Which is a privilege of superpower.
Trump really doesn't have very good economic advisors. Like, his tariffs makes no sense, because if you're going to try and build up America's domestic manufacturing, you actually have to go to these massive companies and say, look, we will support you building this factory, but you have to have an actual concrete plan. It's not going to happen in 3 years. Like, getting the approval takes a year minimum. As someone who works in the building field, it takes a year minimum to get the plans approved.
Yeah, I mean, it's America's kind of a nightmare on this thing. Yeah.
And I've come to the conclusion, when it comes to like the field of economics, a lot of people, I mean, you're an economist, don't seem to get that a lot, they think that if we do more state intervention in the US, that suddenly we are going to that's going to fix all of our problems if we just let the state run everything. But we already pretty much do that to a large extent. We do have a lot of centrally planned stuff in the United States. We just do it in a way that's doesn't even get the benefit of central planning. It's just really like the worst aspects of central planning with the worst aspects of free market capitalism with the worst aspects of protectionism, and we just mix that into a blender. It's like, yeah, that might work.
Yeah, I mean, we basically do get you get the precarity of free markets, you get the artificial increased prices. I think about how, of all of the environmental regulations, which are just anti-civilizational, one of the things that's like a favorite of environmentalists, at least before they decided they didn't like Elon Musk, was electric cars. And as it is in America, electric cars are like these monstrosities. And China does have like what are basically like electric, like I don't want to call them golf carts, but they're electric cars that are very compact, that if sold in America wouldn't cost but $1,000, and you're just not allowed to buy those here, even though in principle that actually is a full validation of the electric car concept. Like, if those things were in America, sort of a private theory of mine, but I think that what would happen is you would see people, take it as a second vehicle, and that electric car would be, the electric car is like your car for like running errands, groceries and stuff, and then your fuel car is for going to work. And that actually would, to some extent, take a load off of gas consumption. But instead, we have whatever the hell that Tesla Cybertruck is. I don't know how much it costs. But Americans, even the pro-environmentalist stuff takes a back seat towards favors for connected companies.
Yeah, and all the leftists, like, we want to hate Musk. That's like, then get rid of all the subsidies and the tax breaks for electric vehicles.
Yeah. Like in the ideal scenario, it's like nuclear power, right? Where you can tell if somebody's a serious environmentalist. Like, okay, if carbon emissions are bad, how do you feel about nuclear? And if they come up with a reason to be against nuclear, then they just hate civilized life. There's no reason why we couldn't live in a world where we have nuclear power plants and those power plants are powering electric cars. Now, there would still be a carbon offset because the car itself is made out of plastic is made out of oil, so there's still a thing going on there. But like, nuclear plants plus electric car equals significantly less gas consumption, and we just are not allowed to live in that world.
Well, yeah, I mean, green politics has just been taken over by literal just people, what we would call watermelons. They're just they push these ideas they think that people, once you make their lives horrible enough, are going to turn to Marxism.
Mm-hmm. There's a guy named Michael Schellenberger, who has some good talk, some good article. Well, he has a good TED talk. If you just look up Michael Schellenberg environmentalism, I think he actually works for Barry Weiss right now. But anyway, it's a good talk on TED, and then he also has a few articles, I think, in Der Spiegel. I think one of them is called "Renewables Can't Power Civilization Because They Were Never Meant to." So people should check that out.
Yeah, another like a little known environmentalism that really, because the left claims to care about the poor, is cash for clunkers made like decent like used cars unaffordable.
Yes.
Because I remember when you could get like a pretty decent like used car for like maybe $3,000, or you get like a pretty shitty beater for $500.
Okay. By the way, so the electric car I'm talking about is the BYD Seagull, which sells for $8,000. And then there's another one called the Wuling Hongguang Mini EV, which sells for $4,000. But the one I was thinking about was the BYD Seagull. And Chinese people have no problem using that for anything that they're doing, in town, so to speak.
Well, the issues I have with it, because I'm an engineering student, is that for some reason the Chinese thought it was a great idea to not have manual like door hinges on some of these and have them like electronically. So if like they catch fire or you get stuck in them,
You're trapped.
it's like I was like, I'm not buying them. That's my problem with electric vehicles is. And so does engine who's going.
I mean, it's a feature of all electric cars, a Chinese one, or what?
Well, no, in general, they have an issue. Well, some do, some don't. Some actually do have like manual levers. Like most cars, like when you actually pull it, it actually pulls a mechanism that actually operates the door hinge. A lot of electric.
You can buy it in Europe. It's called the Dolphin Surf. If you were to go into the EU.
I like my truck I drive for work, and I'm sticking with that.
I remember Amazon had this electric truck. Everybody was upset about it because it looked perfect, and I remember everybody was getting mad. It's like, oh, but why don't you re-release the Helix instead? Like they were like personally offended at this amazing looking like customizable electric truck when they found out that it was electric. You'd think that they bit into a chocolate chip cookie and found out that it was made of dung. They're like, you shouldn't be making this. You'd think a franchise had gone woke.
Well, yeah, a lot of boomerism and like the opposition to certain technologies is literally just out of nostalgia.
Yeah.
But they should really you don't plus of re-release the Hilux. You don't even they don't sell the Hilux in the US. They never have.
Yeah. Didn't meet cafe standards. And I remember in the Big Beautiful Bill, there was talk of removing that law off the books, but instead what they did is they reduced the tax or something to $0 instead of removing it for reasons not fully understood by me. Supposedly something called the Senate Parliamentarian was saying like only the House can something or other.
First of all, the Senate does and the House don't follow their rules, because if we went by the actuals, the part where automatic weapons are banned was actually put in there 100% against the rules.
Yes.
But this really comes to the point that you can't do anything you're never going to get things done in the US when you have the basically interests of the boomers weighed through the interests of the economy, the interests of the general public, because basically I'll let all the young people listening to this, you people don't show up at election time. If young people showed up like the boomers, they could oust the boomer politicians, but they don't.
I mean, the question is who they would vote for. So it wouldn't just be showing up in November. You would need to either A, start primarying people, or B, you need voting for a third party or something just to punish politicians. But it's not even like boomer politicians. Like even Nancy Pelosi was able to bring AOC to tears. So even the millennial politicians, they can't stop the boomer occupied government.
They can't stop the gerontocracy.
Yeah.
Well, see, AOC, we realized something very simple. You have no power here, child. all the levels of power. Like that's why I laugh at when these people's like, look at this congressman. It's like, look at this congressman. It's like these people are just tap dancing monkeys for the establishment. Like they really don't change anything.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't have anything to prompt off that. Yeah, it's basically true.
Well, yeah, this really is what I guess I'm kind of going out of your realms of expertise.
I guess I'll double down on recommending The Age of Entitlement for anybody who wants to learn more about the rise of the baby boomers.
Another good one is Boomers, the most selfish generation. It's more of a left-leaning guy. The guy's kind of a leftist, but it's also good about just the complete sociopathy of the Boomer generation. But another thing that I seem to notice when it comes to just like future planning and basically people, and since you work at your fellow at the Mises Institute, the inability for people to do long-term planning at all anymore. Like there's no long-term vision that any of these people have.
Okay, I see what you're alluding to. So there's time preference, your ability to delay gratification, and it's sort of mediated by the interest rates, is the economics component. But then, the idea that America itself, its leadership, doesn't have long-term plans. I mean, there's a degree to which I don't think that there are a lot of systems that don't have long-term plans, like they follow rules. So, when you look back at certain historical events and you say they must have planned this all along, but really what happened was they had some rule they were following at each and every moment, and just enforce that on each other. And I think that America, it's not so much that America has no plan. I think that America's following rules that are idiotic at best, and in some cases are just sort of dictated to it by, Israel or, various lobbying groups.
Yeah, I mean, like you can't get anything done, and if you were like a dissident politician, you said something like this great example is Brandon Herrera he just doesn't want to give foreign aid, and then basically Israel flooded his primary, the person he's running against, with millions of dollars.
Ilhan Omar's primaries, there's an article you can read on the UNS Review by Eric Stryker I think it's called Jewish Money Power Against Ilhan Omar. But the primary elections against Ilhan pull in more money than all the generals and primaries and all of the adjacent districts combined. Which is highly instructive as to how Jewish power works on that front. So it's not that they're bribing politicians. Rather, what happens is there's a threat that if a politician steps out of line, then their opponent will get infinity money. This also happens to John Fetterman. A good book to read on that would be The Israel Lobby and U.S. Foreign Policy by Mearsheimer and Walt, or Big Israel by Grant F. Smith. Or actually, I totally forgot, It Could Happen Here by Jonathan Greenblatt. So Greenblatt runs the ADL, and he actually gives a comprehensive view of, frankly, what he does every day.
Yeah, you think like these people wouldn't write down and I am subverting the government. This is how I'm doing space.
Well, they're all proud to do it, So for Greenblatt's book, he's just talking about how he's fighting hate. And he just describes, I make all these phone calls and I never take no for an answer. And if somebody obstructs me, I just call their support network and so on.
I think this is just my personal thing. These people don't like the concept of legalized dueling because that would really, I've come to the conclusion that bringing back judicial dueling would solve all the problems, because most of the people who push these things are the biggest pussies in the world.
Yeah.
You're an anti-Semite. I challenge you to a duel, sir.
Oh, what, to prove that I'm not?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Like, I mean, in the words of Louis Farrakhan, I'm not an anti-Semite, I'm an anti-termite.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
all right. I think we're hitting the hour. You want me to do my plugs?
Oh yeah, you can do your plugs. I mean, the podcast is usually 3 hours.
Oh.
But Dr. Dumas, we successfully did I successfully finally did an episode where I don't just derail the entire conversation.
Weren't we supposed to be talking about psychedelic drugs?
Yeah, but we did though.
I know. I'm just playing.
It only see, that's the whole thing. Is like I have all these things written down, but I'm just I mean, I guess I've gotten better at not interrupting my guests. So it used to take a lot longer because also I'm not getting in a screaming argument with my co-host.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for having me on. So if people want to see me, they should follow me on Twitter, Anarchy in Black. It's written right there, I do believe. And you should go to my Substack, which is mgautreau.substack.com. My Substack is called Bias Confirmations. There you can read my Gang Weed Conservatism article series, which is what this episode we were just having was originally about, where I go through the full spectrum psychedelics push. You can also find there my right-wing Reading Rainbow article series, which I think the name should kind of imply for your audience what it's about. You know, that's why I'm constantly able to, there's a book about this. Oh, there's a book about this. I think I'm on my 9th thing in the series, where I give one basic book just to introduce you to a topic, and then I recommend 2 branches, each with 3 books each, so that if a person wants to become comprehensively aware of it, they can do so. You should also join the Property and Freedom Book Club. You'll find that. If you go to my Substack and you look at the top bar, you'll see it. We recently finished reading Laurent Guillenot's book From Yahweh to Zion, and our next book is going to be Hans Hermann Hoppe's Democracy, the God That Failed.
May I suggest a good one that you probably haven't read?
Sure.
Political Parties by Robert Michel.
Spell his name?
I don't know. Just look up political parties, then Robert Michel.
Michel. Got it. 1911.
Yeah, it's not to be mean to Dr. Hop, but I'm gonna be honest. He kind of lifted some ideas from his books about it.
Everybody's lifting ideas from everybody.
That is true. So you can find his Substack. It's in the description. I've accidentally put your Dr. Dumas. Am I pronouncing your last name?
Dumas.
Dumas. That's a French name. My God. Not to be that guy, but you're like when you go on your Twitter profile, it leads to it doesn't lead to your Substack. It leads to, I guess, your.
Oh no, my pinned tweet is my Substack. That URL is just to my personal website.
Yeah, so Robert Michel's Political Party is something I would recommend you read. 6 books of the look, I'm a monarchist. I have to tell people to read monarchist literature. 6 books of the Commonwealth. Machiavelli's The Prince. And Democracy, the God That Failed. You know, I have not finished that.
We'll join the book club and then we'll finish it together.
Okay. Thanks for coming on, Doctor. I'm bad.
Don't worry about it, Dr. Dumas. All right.
Dumas.
I thank you for having me.